Reynolds. I'm the CEO of Mars Discovery District. And before we begin, I'd like to make a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that we are gathered here today on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. This land is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities. And we are grateful to be able to innovate on this land. The First Peoples upheld the tradition of stewardship, sustaining the ecosystems around them, and we recognize this responsibility as we build a more inclusive future. So it's a pleasure to welcome you to Mars Center and to join colleagues in government, industry, and all across the innovation ecosystem. Welcome. We're going to have a very important conversation today following Tuesday's federal budget. And at Mars, we work with over 1,200 science and technology companies across many industries and sectors. And thousands of innovators work at this center every day. These are the companies and the people building solutions to global challenges and creating jobs and economic value here in Canada. And we are encouraged by this new budget with its focus on productivity, competitiveness, and the role of innovation to drive both. It's clear the government sees Canada's innovators as central to accelerating economic growth. We welcome the progress on procurement reform and the commitment to make Canada a first customer for homegrown innovation. Early validation is key to helping Canadian companies scale from here and onto global markets. And we're also pleased to see support for high-growth ventures and measures aimed at helping them access capital and markets. The companies we work with are ready to grow and they're ready to compete. And ensuring they have the conditions to do so is essential to our shared economic future. And with that in mind, it's my pleasure to introduce someone who's been at the center of shaping this work and someone who needs no introduction. Please join me in welcoming the Honourable François-Philippe Champagne, Minister of Revenue and Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
Even the guys in the backs are smiling, so this is good. When you have the security guys who are smiling and cheering, we're on to something good. Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Good, you know, it's a good day. It's a good day to be Canadian. It's a good day to be in Canada. It's a good day to be in Toronto. Good day to be in Ontario. I was just with your Minister of Finance of Ontario, which is having his big day today. And thank you to the Sea of Mars. I mean, Mars has been in many ways, you've always been nice to me. Both you personally, but also Mars. You know, when I started, this is the place where great ideas come from. This is where we build the future. This is the people in the room who build Canada's future. And I'm so happy that I could return the favor in a way that almost, well, it's been 2 days now since the budget. I mean, trust me, these days all look the same. In the last few weeks and months, we've been working hard to hopefully present something that will inspire the nation and the world in how you could do things differently. And this was really an investment budget to make sure that you would have the tools, and Canadians and our workers and community across the nation we can reach our full potential as a nation, and giving ourselves the means of our ambition. Believe it or not, I've not even started the formal remarks. They're very good. I can text them to you after. This is just me sharing with you how I feel today, seeing all of you, many friends in the room. And one of them is Michael Cotto. Michael is with me. Why don't you stand up, Michael, so you can give a big round of applause. Michael is a colleague, but he's also you know, a big position as the chair of our Ontario caucus. So Michael gets to be your voice every week in front of the Prime Minister to say what matters to Ontario, what matters to this community, what matters to people. So Michael, thank you for joining us, and great to be with you today. I'm really excited, as I think you can see. You know, I'm not even willing to go into speech yet. There's so much enthusiasm about what you do and the great innovators and the builders that you are, because we really need to think about how we're going to position Canada in the digital economy and the economy of tomorrow. You know, how do we win and keep winning? I think we have a good base, but let's be honest. Sometimes I'm reminded that the scope, scale, and speed of change I was doing on City News this morning, and I was trying to reflect. I'm 55, but I was saying, you know, we've not seen that much change in a long time, at that speed at least, in so many ways that we're adapting. There's headwinds, but I'm very confident that Canada has the wherewithal to withstand it. In fact, I think we have fiscal capacity. You know, when I was at the International Monetary Fund recently, you may have seen it or heard it, the Director General singled out 2 countries in the world, not 20, not 10, not 5, 2. She said Germany and Canada really stand out. Those are really, yeah, I think we should be proud of ourselves and what we do as a nation. She said there's 2 countries who really stand out, who have the fiscal capacity and wherewithal to do that. And they said if they invest in what we're doing, competitiveness, productivity, if we invest in housing, our infrastructure, this is how you grow the economy. But at the same time, I said, yes, people may want us to obviously focus on investment, but they also want to be us to be putting the house in order. So yes, you have a license to be ambitious in your expenses if you're in your investment, if you're rigorous with your expenses. And that's what we've been demonstrating, that we can also find $60 billion and put the house in order, and I think that's what Canadians expect from us. Be very thoughtful in how you invest our money, but at the same time make sure that you bring the expenses in Ottawa to a more sustainable level. So with that, obviously, very pleased to be with you, as you could say. I hope you've seen that we presented a budget recently. I'm sure by now some of you may have read it. We tried to do it also differently this year. You may have seen we put the first 20 pages to really, historically, they were telling me, Minister, we keep the tough news for the back. I said, why don't we put the news in the front so that everyone will see what we've done and why. Because it's not only how much you borrow, but why. And I was saying, when you see what we've done this year, 75% of it was really to support people. 75% was affordability and sovereignty, which I think every one of us would agree. We need to give people a break, but at the same time, defend our great country. So with that, I'm very delighted to be here at Mars. Everyone knows Mars, not only here in Ontario, I would say, Madam Chair, but around the world. You're I would like to say, one of the greatest innovation hub, not only in the country, but I would say you're recognized around the world. And you may have seen in the budget, we have probably the most ambitious talent attraction strategy in the world. Now my team is looking at me saying, hopefully you're going to get to the speech now, because that was supposed to be 3 minutes, right? Okay. But I just wanted to say that in the budget you will have seen that you're going to be happy to see that we've put something to attract the best and brightest in the world, to grow our economy, to come in our research center, to really bring the innovation here. And you've seen that innovation technology, AI, is at the center of what we want to achieve. And often reflect, I was with the CEO of NVIDIA not too long ago, which had some success, which you look at that, and we were trying to think about the transformational nature of AI. And I'm always reminded when he said that, I hope he doesn't mind I say that. I don't think he would mind. So I said, what I've seen the most transformational in my life so far was internet. And I said, how would you compare that to AI? And he stopped talking, and it's tough with a guy like me. You sit in front of each other, look at each other in the eyes, and 5 seconds, 10 seconds, a bit long, 15, 20. And then he said, I think it's going to be at least 100 times more transformational. And you try to put that in your brain. I came home that night, I said, assuming that, he's exaggerating, assuming it's like just 50% or 90% or even 10%. But it just say that we need to make sure we're going to be using that technology and quantum and cybersecurity to really be at the leading front. Reminded that Canada was the first country in the world with an AI strategy, by the way. You may not remember that, but we were the first in the world and the first to have a quantum strategy to do that. So I think we just need to make sure we do that. Et évidemment, aujourd'hui, je vais vous parler des mesures qu'on va mettre en place pour stimuler la concurrence, parce que la concurrence, l'innovation est essentielle pour augmenter la productivité au Canada et certainement rendre la vie plus abordable pour les Canadiens, puis évidemment faire baisser les prix. Vous l'avez vu dans le budget de 2025, je pense qu'on saisit une opportunité générationnelle pour transformer notre économie, notre énergie, mais aussi nos échanges commerciaux et la souveraineté, assurer la souveraineté du pays. So what I was saying, in this time of uncertainty, there's a call to make our economy more resilient and competitive. I was saying, there's some headwind, but we need to double down. I think this is not the time to hope for the best, but to work for a better future together and use the talent, the people, what we have in Canada to make us strong. And one of them is to increase competitiveness and competition in Canada. We started, but I think there's so much more to do, and I think you are the people who understand that, because competition is central to productivity, innovation, affordability, and there's so much more to do in our country. And you know, I like to benchmark ourselves with the G7, because for me this is always, people say, why would, because this is good. This is where you look, where do I stand? On absolute term, you may say, oh, it's good. But when you look at others, you say, well, we could do far better. And that's really the spirit that I'm sure you have, and making sure that we put Canadians and Canadian consumers at the heart of what we're going to do to give them more choices. That's what we're going to be talking about after, how we give more choice to. So in the telecom sector, I don't need to spend too much time. I think you've seen it. We need to put forward measures. For example, dig once. You know, it's like common sense in a way, you know. If we're going to dig, let's make sure we have all the fiber optic lines that would go at the same time, just to accelerate, make sure our communities can connect. You know, if we want to do more, we need to be connected. Cutting red tape when it comes to the expansion of telecom networks. I mean, believe it or not, I come from a rural riding which is bigger than Belgium. Believe it or not, but there are still folks in my community who don't have access to internet or cell phone. So we need to make sure we expand, because you know, I often say Mars is a great place for great ideas, but you want to bring everyone together to make sure that people could be obviously connected. And also the spectrum, which, you know, today there's a lot of technologies where you can connect with satellite. There's so many things that are going to come, and in a great country like Canada, we need to make sure that spectrum is available quickly and we lead. We already have great telecom companies, but I think people have seen the prices we pay, and that's something we hear all the time. How can we make sure it's more competitive, the roaming charge, things that would make a difference in people's life. Let me come to the financial sector in 2 minutes, because I'm reminded that this is an armchair discussion, and I look forward to hear from you. But it's clear that we have a very strong financial sector, and we need one to have a strong economy. But the purpose of this morning and what you do and what we've put in the budget is to give more choices to consumers, put consumers at the heart of that, and obviously open banking will be key. I'm comparing that with the G7. We have a bit of catch up to do, but the Canadian stable coin, I think we're going to be ahead. So on one end, we're making sure we catch up, but on the other end, I want us to lead. And that's really what this budget was about. And, you know, allowing people to switch between financial institutions more easily, increasing transparency. And many of you here are leaders, and you have great ideas how we can do that and make the financial system even stronger in Canada. And looking at some of the costs, you would have seen some measures in the budget. So, for example, we want to address the issue around fees charged to Canadians who want to move their investment and registered account from one bank to the other. I think that makes sense, you know, to make sure that both, you know, in terms of cost, but also in terms of process and time, it's more fluid. You know, if people want to move, they should be able to do that. Same thing when people, there's still people using checks. I do, I know. I'm 55, so I use checks, but you know, there's an issue when you deposit these checks, you know, to make the first amount immediately available after depositing a check from today is $100, but that we would move that to $150 to make sure that people can have access to their fund more easily. And I think what you want from us is regulatory certainty. Stability, predictability, the rule of law. When I went back to law school at the time was kind of the fundamental pillars of attracting investments. And I think what you're asking us and what we're aiming to do is to provide you certainty in terms of regulation, where we're going, what we're going to do, so that you can craft the products, think about the services, and make the investments needed. And I would say this is really an investment budget. I was saying that on the news. From a tax perspective, a dollar invested in Canada will yield more than if you invest $1 in the United States. If you look at it on a tax basis, the marginal effective tax rate in Canada is now lower than in the United States, which is, I would say, as a nation, when I say we're giving ourselves the means of our ambition. But the thing about open banking, I think you've been waiting for a long time. And I want to acknowledge that. I see people nodding in the room. Some people have been waiting for a long, long time to provide you certainty on open banking and clear timelines. And I think that's what we're doing today with you, for you, listening to you, so that you can build what we're going to do. We're also going to be making change in the legislation to provide the new data mobility rights in Canada. And I think that makes sense. This is empowering. When we say you want consumers to take control, or Canadians have control, making sure that we have that new data mobility right is quite essential for that. Et une autre chose qu'on a fait, vous avez vu dans le budget, c'est que on est à l'écoute, évidemment, du secteur financier, mais on veut aussi confier la supervision du système bancaire ouvert à la Banque du Canada. C'est essentiel pour plus d'efficacité, plus de rapidité, plus de cohérence. So what I really mean is that we've asked the Bank of Canada, an independent but very trusted institution in our country, to be supervising the open banking sector and making sure that, you know, we would have that. We will accelerate the next phase, like I said, of open banking by legislating the ability to direct actions such as switching accounts or making bill payments by mid-2027. I think this is a big thing for all of you, and certainly is going to be welcomed by the community. But at the same time, we announced a new federal framework to regulate and provide certainty for the issuance of Canadian stablecoins. And I think that's a big thing. I mean, we wanted to lead, not to wait, and be ahead of the curve in that. And like I said, working with trusted institutions to make that happen. And I think this is going to be good. This is really us being at the cutting edge of what we can do and how we're going to do that in the future. And we also want smaller players to be able to increase the participation in the banking sector. So you'll see there's a number of things we have done that so that they can do that. I also want, in closing, because I appreciate you've been already patient, but I want to thank also the large financial institutions because they really shine and make Canada a place that the world is looking upon. They've been tremendous work. I work with them very closely. They've been key partners at every step of the way to catalyze investments across the economy and also helping us to build big and build bold, but also building now. They're the backbone. They're going to provide the backbone of the infrastructure needed to tackle issues around fraud and money laundering that will support the entire sector. And we are lucky that they are the backbone also to make sure that we provide stability of our financial system in Canada. And I think this is crucial if we want to build on that. My point is building on what we do best in Canada. And I want to say we even have the CEO of the Canadian Banker Association, which is also the CEO of the International Banker Association. We were in Washington together for the meeting of the International Monetary Fund. And it's great to see Canadians shine on the world stage. And you were there, you were shining. And actually, you may have seen also, and I'll really stop there because now they're telling me, Minister, we know your enthusiasm, but you only had one coffee. How could that be possible that you keep on going? But one thing I want to say is that we're also going to have a financial crime agency. And I think this is something I've been wanting for a long time, modeling that with the United. Yeah, I think we can applaud because this is a big thing. Modeling, looking at what the UK has been doing, looking at best practices. We work together, and it's interesting. We had also Dave Mackay from Royal Bank. And it's great when you have, imagine, I chaired the meeting of the G7. Our friends, which is the CEO of the Canadian Banking Association, present. And the banker they invite to tell about, you know, all the systems that international banks are putting together is the CEO of one of the Canadian banks. you had 3 Canadians presenting to the FBI, the head of the Treasury Department, the head of about every functions that I can name in the United States were around the table, and it's 3 Canadians. Isn't that great? This is about Canada. There's something to say, you know, and I'm glad that we're going to do that together. So with that, I hope you're going to be embarking on this journey together. I think there's a lot for us to, let's seize the moment. I would say let's make Canada the innovation superpower that we want and supercharge growth in our country. And let's together build Canada strong. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a fireside discussion. I hope you stay with us. But again, I want to say thank you to the great innovators, to the great inventors, to the great entrepreneurs that you are. We are with you. We're going to be along your side in that journey. And we're going to be with this budget. I hope you see this moment to seize so that we can do more together. With that, merci tout le monde. Thank you. Nice to see you. It's nice to see you.
Great to see you too. Good morning, everybody. I'm Eva Wong, co-founder and chief operating officer at Borrowell, a Canadian fintech company. First of all, thank you so much, Minister Champagne, for your energy, your enthusiasm, and your remarks. Let's give Minister Champagne a round of applause.
It's good to be.
I believe one of your nicknames is the Energizer Bunny, and I think we can see that.
It was started by a former prime minister, but it stick to me. I'm the old new guy, can they call it? Yeah.
Well, I think this was one of the most highly anticipated budgets, at least in recent memory, and there were a number of exciting announcements, especially for the tech community and especially for fintech. Personally, I was really excited to see support for a Buy Canada policy, support for AI, and especially increasing competition and innovation in financial services. But maybe to start off, for Budget 2025, what's the overarching message broadly for Canadians, first of all, and then secondly, for the fintech community?
I think, well, listen, I said it like it's an investment budget, but for me it's taking control, you know, because if there are some headwinds, like I said, there's 2 choices. You can just, you know, retract and hope for the best. And I think we say, no, history is teaching us that these are the kind of moments where, especially when you have the fiscal capacity, like I said, and I know I try to make it concrete for people like my mothers and others to say, what does that mean? I said, well, you know, you go to buy grocery, you spend, you buy a house, you invest, kind of, that's the thing we wanted to present to Canadians. It's a shift. And people have said, Minister, why do you say it's generational? Well, I said, look at what we're doing in terms of infrastructure, largely investment or capital investment, infrastructure, housing, productivity, competitiveness, and our defense. I benchmarked that against Germany, which is the largest economy in Europe. And you look at that, their plan is 500 billion euro over 12 years. Ours is 450 billion over 5 years in Canadian dollar. So we compare very well to one of the largest economy in the world. And they've done that because they realize that, you know, the challenge we're facing around housing is not unique to Canada. The challenge we're facing around infrastructure is not unique in Canada. It's not unique also on productivity. So how do you make sure that you build for the future? And I was just with doing a podcast with some young people. I'd say, how do you make the balance between today and tomorrow, kind of? Well, I said, yes, you need to address affordability, because people would say, it's all great that you're doing for the future, but what about me? What about this week? What about this month? What about this year? So that's keeping an eye on today, like the affordability measure, because when you look at the 78 billion, this year, 75% of that was really to do 2 things. One, to protect our sovereignty, which is our response to the tariff, because, you know, Canada is not unique, although you may say we have the best deal, but if you're in the steel sector or aluminum or the auto sector, it doesn't look that great. The other thing is affordability, because if you talk to young people, their main concern is affordability, so they're the tax cut. So I think when you put that in perspective, and I think what is really a change of course in this country with the Prime Minister is to say in 3 years, we're going to balance our operating expenses with our revenues, so when we borrow is to grow. That, I think, is a big shift when you say we're not going to borrow for, you know, day-to-day expenses, as I was explaining at CT News. It's going to be to do capital formation, and I think this is showing discipline and vision at the same time. At a time where, let's be honest, the world is changing, like I said, the speed scale. We preside the G7 this year, so we have an insight in that. We drive the agenda and the discussion, but you were with me. You know, it's not only Canada. The world is trying to readjust, but you know, we're a big magnet for talent. Like I said, we build big things in Canada. We have very strong industry. Look at the nuclear industry here. Look at the car industry. We build ships. We build cars. We build planes. We have critical minerals, which is essential for the economy of the 21st century. We have energy. So there's not going to be growth without energy, but we're blessed with that. And then we have trade agreements with all the other G7 countries. So it's a good place to start. Now, how can we do more with that? I think that's really what this is all about. It's kind of it's a plan for the future, but also making sure that we keep Canadians with us, because they say, okay, well, can you do something for me now? And we say yes, but at the same time, we need to keep an eye on the future to position ourselves in a sea of change.
Yeah.
In a sea of change, which, I don't know, people may agree or disagree with me, but what we see and what we're going to see is, and we've just seen it, you know, the volatility. We even have a chart you may see in the budget. We call that the uncertainty index. And it's higher than in the last financial crisis by a significant margin. So this is what this is, you know. It's not just in Canada. It's kind of, it's a chart that reflects the sentiment in I would say, probably advanced economies. But that's what you see. So this is real. This is felt in the factory floor. This is felt in families. This is felt in schools, where people decide to say, what is going to, and then you add to that AI and you know, general purpose technology like that, which are going to change a number of things. Quantum, you know, when you put AI, quantum, and cyber together, that's a mix that says, you know, it's a bit like electricity in the last century. And you say, okay, I often say sometimes it's almost difficult to fathom how this is going to be changing in terms of new material, research and development in the health sector. There's a lot of productivity and improvement that's going to come from that, and you are the ones who are going to invent, support, finance these great discoveries that are going to make, I think, our country more competitive, more productive. We already have a head start, but let's be honest, there's a number of people who are also investing, but I think we have, with institutions like Mars and others, we have the brain, and it starts with the people. We even have people who won a Nobel Prize. So yeah, I would say we're in a good place. But, you know, this is not a moment to stop or to rest. This is a moment to double down, and I hope that's what you see in the budget. Yeah,
for sure. And I think, as you've said, with great uncertainty also comes great opportunity, especially with all this new technology. So what's the message of the budget for the fintech community in particular?
Well, we heard you. I mean, if I summarize that in a word, you know, open banking, Canadian stable coins. Like I say, open banking, a bit of catch up to do. So, you know, honesty is the basis of trust. I won't be here and saying there's a bit of catch up. Again, blame me for that, but I like to always compare, and Matt was really the brain in my office to help me in that. I said, you deserve a big round of applause. It's funny. In the car, I said, because I always say, how do we compare with the G7? So we were just walking. He said, remind me, Matt, how do we compare? He said, you know, a bit of catch-up, boss, to do. You know, so that's really, because I like to see where we are. But on stablecoin, we're ahead. And so that's a good place to be, because you've been waiting for a long time. And probably because I wasn't, not in the fintech sector, but I was in business, you need predictability. And when you don't know, there's nothing worse than that. Because when you know, you can plan, you can borrow, you would know, Michael, you know, you've been there, you can plan things. You can talk to your investors, you can try to recruit people because you know, but when you just don't know when things are going to land, that's very difficult. So that's the first thing. I would say regulatory certainty, making sure that we put strong foundation. And you've seen the role of the Bank of Canada in that, which is an independent but very, very trusted institution in our country and around the world. So at the same time, we're innovating, but I want to make sure consumers feel that the stability and strength of our system is going to be guaranteed by institutions like the Bank of Canada, with the proper safeguards and rules in place so that people would have confidence. So I think that's really the message. On one end, doing that, and the Canadian stable coins, that was important to me because, and I would say the Prime Minister, because, you know, the alternative would be that people would basically use stablecoin dominated in US dollars. So, you know, if we can lead and facilitate that, I think this is and you're going to be innovating, but we're going to do that in a very smart and I would say structured way, fiat-based assets, so that it's really looking at the best practice and working with the Bank of Canada. I think that's going to give the confidence that people need in order to look at these innovation. And it's a bit like AI. I always say, you know, you need a framework that builds trust, so then you can have innovation and adoption. You know, you need to start with trust. People you would, but you know, people in the street, when they see that, we need to build a strong trust foundation. And when people trust, then they would adopt, and then you can innovate.
Maybe on stablecoin, I think one of the key questions in the sector is how stablecoins will be classified. Will they be sort of classified as securities, which would prevent them from being used, you know, more broadly or practically as a payment mechanism, or will they be considered more of, you know, be able to be used as payments? Can you say more about that?
Well, I think we're aiming for a payment system, you know, and I think that would be I think it would be helpful also because, as you know, securities regulation in a federation like us, a bit more challenging, as you know, in the sense that not unlike what they feel in Europe. You may have seen the Draghi report in Europe. They were saying their challenge also is to have one capital market, and they don't. So I think to put that in the payment system would provide the consistency that you would need to facilitate trade and commerce across provinces. You know, you were saying the build one Canadian economy, becoming our own best customers. I mean, it's some of the things we are doing that we should have done before. But I think because of the challenge we're facing, we're kind of looking ourselves as Canada and say, we're finishing the unfinished work of Confederation in many ways, where we just need to get things working properly, efficiently, fluidity in Canada, so that you have one, you know, respecting the separation of power under our Constitution, but at the same time, more fluidity, you know, that's what we're trying to do. And that's why having that with the Bank of Canada, as you know, the institution which will ensure the stability and the rules around that, I think will give consumers across the country confidence, as opposed that if you have that as security, then you have some commonality, but very different rules. And that could be, I would think it would be difficult for you also to innovate. When you have too many sets of rules, then you come to a place. So that's the aim we have, and that's the goal we're going to pursue. Yeah,
that's great. That's very clarifying. Well, a topic that's near and dear to the heart of many in this room, including myself, is on open banking. Can you say more about next steps? So I think we understand that legislation will be introduced in the Budget Implementation Act in a couple of weeks. What happens after that? And when can Canadians expect to have access to phase one, at least, which is the REIT access?
Well, 2026, and then obviously, like you said, we need to get some votes. That's why after that, I'll be back to Ottawa. If you have any thoughts about more votes. And because I'm always asked that question, and I said, it's kind of interesting they ask me. I said, you should ask others about what they feel, you know. Take that example. Would you really stand in front of your constituent, whoever you are, and say that, you know, the investments we're doing, look at you here today. You'd say, oh, the measures we put, like to have a Canadian stable coin, we're not going to vote for that? Really? Or open banking that you've been, it's interesting that I'm always getting, not you, I would say, it's a great question, but the journalists always ask me, I said, I'm the last person to ask. I'm the one with the Prime Minister who made the budget. I believe in Canada, I believe we need to do these things. I believe that we need that for growth. It's really for others to ask the question, is that really, you know, at a time where the world is facing headwind, you wouldn't want us to go back to an election, really? I mean, that's the last thing I feel. I mean, I'm pretty good with politics. Folks in the street, that's not what they want. They want the country forward. So just on that, to say, yes, I need to go back for the vote. 2026 first phase, 2027 more. But certainly we are on a journey to put the consumer at the heart of that. You know, what they do with their data, how they can do that, read only. I mean, there's a lot of things you already do, but for me, bringing Canada at least at par with my G7 peers, and hopefully see with them, working with the large institutions and working with the backbone to ensure that, cyber is a big issue. I'm looking at you because that was the topic of our discussion in Washington, and the world is kind of looking. I think it's not too much to say, but you were presenting on behalf of the bankers of the world to that. So I mean, the world is looking. So we're going to do it smart. We're going to do it safe. And we're going to do it with a view to make sure that, we could be a model for other jurisdictions, how they do that. And Canada's going to lead. And I think we have the credibility, we have the vision, and my word to you is that you've been waiting for long. So as much as I can provide you regulatory certainty, forward signals, we'll do that so that you can plan accordingly, and that's what we're going to be. And I think the potential is great. I mean, think about that. Canadians will discover things that I think they don't even appreciate today, what you can do with open banking. There's a lot there for you to, I would think, to market, to partner, to also work with the large financial institution and say, okay, there's innovation and all that we can do together, but we start with a very strong base, We're lucky to have that financial institutions, the backbone, which are very solid, and where do you go from there? You go from good to great,
You bring up an important point, which obviously the budget needs to be approved. I guess with the assumption, let's hope that happens. It sounds to me like you're saying around 2026 would be sort of phase one of REIT access, and then, as you've shared, 2027 for right access is when the legislation would go through.
And we're like I said, no, I'm hopeful on the budget votes. I think. But if you have any friends, don't hesitate to make calls. First vote is this afternoon at 5. So just to give you a sense, But no, I think people will come to their sense because it's sometimes I say, think about what it does for the country, think of what it does to the communities, think about, talk about, these are, for me, sometimes you'd wish they would be outside the scope of politics because they're so foundational. It's not about political parties. It's foundational to Canada. When you say we're doing the unfinished work of Confederation, there should be really no party line on that. We just need to do it as a country. So I think I'm confident. I mean, people will come to their sense and we'll be able to move because those are critical things. Because on relative term, we need to keep pushing to be at par or even ahead of our colleagues. Because one thing that I've learned is that the world is not waiting for us. So we need to move at the speed of that change that is happening in the world. Because it's phenomenal, the change in geopolitics, the change in trade, the change almost in economics, the change in technology. I mean, that's what I was saying, where for some people, all that might be frightening. And I think we all have a role to reassure people it's going to be okay. Canada is a strong country. It's going to be okay. We're going to do what we have to do. It's going to be fine. It's going to be solid. Because it's like the technology is going fast. The world in months have been changing in so many ways that we're still trying, to find our beacon of stability. There's still a lot of volatility. Let's mention tariffs. I mean, there's so many things going on at the same time that if you're in an industry, hopefully that industry can give that confidence to Canadian and people.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I think there is such trust is because of the stability that's provided by our regulators. I appreciate that the umbrella that a lot of these fintech changes were proposed under was around increasing competition and innovation in financial services. I guess I wonder whether there's any thought to extending the mandate that regulators have to include not just stability, but also innovation and competition.
Well, we're always looking, I've done that before, for example, in the telecom sector, one of the key pillars or principle, imagine, that I had to add was security. And I was surprised that even when we crafted that, not me, but when it was done, the Telecom Act, security was not like one of the pillars. And I said, well, that makes a lot of sense thinking about cybersecurity because, the connection between the payment system, what you're going to do, and the telecom sector, that was part of the thing that Canada is bringing, is that you have to look at these things as one ecosystem because today most people, I mean, I don't know if I can say most, but I would defer to you, but a lot of people, put it this way, at least, are using mobile devices in order to do their banking or to do transactions. So you can dissociate the telecom sector from the financial sector because it becomes one, at least if you're a consumer. I mean, I would appreciate if you say, well, it's two different industries, but it comes at once for the consumer. Consumer doesn't, you know, when you do with your app to your bank, you don't think, oh, there's two sectors of the industry. It's one app. Well, maybe you have more bank account than me. You may have two apps. But it's all one. So how do you ensure a seamless, I don't want to even say transition, but a seamless approach so that these new innovation, from a consumer perspective, I think what we're doing is that we're putting consumer in the front row, in the front seat, because from a consumer perspective, they don't make any difference in that. They just want to make sure the application, I guess, they use works, it's safe, they can trust it, and for the rest, they would say they leave it to us in terms of making sure we have supervisory bodies to do that, the right regulation, and the right people to do all that. So I think what we're saying there is really putting consumer front and center in how that, you know, data mobility and making sure that all that. But it was very interesting when we talked because, so to your point, we'll have to look because sometime, like I said, in the telecom sector, we need to make sure security. I used to be the industry minister and making sure, you know, an industry minister could act very quickly if we saw a breach in that, because that could have impact. There's smarter people than me in the room on cybersecurity, but you need to be able to act very quickly to patch something. And the other thing I would say, the Financial Crime Agency is the same thing. When you look at money laundering, financing of terrorism and all that, this knows no border.
Yeah.
I mean, we were having example of the FBI. I mean, the speed at which people move these things, no border whatsoever. And as you know, the rule of law is pretty much now by country. So by the time we do that, we need better coordination, liaison officers, technology to help us to detect what's happening in one part of the world. What does that mean? Are they using a financial center in a place that would transfer money in Canada that would go? So I think this is where Canada can play a big role. And I can tell you, people that were at the table when we did that were very looking at Canada to say, you can play a central role, and that's why also the Financial Crime Agency, it's all part of this trust thing, you know. We will combat money laundering, we'll make sure we have the strength of the financial system, we'll innovate at the same time, we'll provide consumer with trust and better tools for them to manage their money and their investments, and I think that's going to be welcomed by people.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this has been a really clarifying conversation. I know as a fintech community here, we really appreciate the focus on innovation and competition. Maybe I'll just end with one final question. I have two kids, and since they are the future of our country, I asked if they had any questions. This isn't particularly hard-hitting, but my daughter wanted to know if you were more a pancakes, waffles, or French toast guy.
Oh, good. I'm going to call your daughter to give her the response directly. We're going to do a FaceTime. Pancakes. Pancakes.
Okay.
But I'm doing more the cleaning than the making. I'm lucky that someone in our home is better at the making, so I do the cleaning. But pancakes for sure, and with maple syrup from Canada, obviously.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Merci tout le monde.
Okay.
Merci.
Thank you.
We'll call your daughter.
Yeah.
Good one. I think this is it, no? Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for... Whenever you're ready. You've been patient. I saw you when I came this morning. No, but let me just say, it was great to be here in Toronto 2 days after the budget to talk with the financial community to highlight a bit what's in the budget. You know, there's a lot in the budget to talk about consumer, providing more choice for consumers. We talk about open banking, which is really for, you know, people watching at home, is making consumer front and center, so they have more choices. Building trust as well. You know, we have very strong banks in Canada, and the point is, how can we innovate together? So this was a great discussion. I think people appreciate also when we talk about Canadian stable coins, making sure that we would be leading in the world with that new kind of instrument under the supervision of the Bank of Canada. But at the same time, when it comes to open banking, this is really, you know, ensuring that we would have a strong financial sector that would be cutting edge in innovation, and at the same time, working to improve, I would say, all aspects of the financial sector. If you bring new players, we need to make sure that the systems that are being used are both innovative but also very secure. So for me, making sure that we look at issues around artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. Canadians are very proud of their financial sector and their banking system because it's solid, it's world leading, and it's very secure. So how do you bring innovation, building on the strong foundations that the banks have been providing to Canadians for many years?
Today you talked a lot about investing in big infrastructure, and yesterday the Ontario Finance Minister complained that there may not have been as much investment as they would like in nuclear and the Ring of Fire, or even the tunnel under the 401. How do you... is this
I met him this morning. So Peter is a great friend. By the way, it's a big day for the Ontario Finance Minister. He's going to present an update. We had a meeting this morning. And we talk. We're very close to each other. We understand the role that Ontario is playing in the Canadian economy. We want to work together. Like I said, if you look at the infrastructure investment of Canada and the capital investment plan that we presented, it's very generational. I said it compares well to Germany, which is the largest economy in Europe. And I said when you compare Canada to what has been done there and the choice we've made with respect to investment in infrastructure, investment in housing, investment in productivity and competition, and also in our sovereignty, this is a very solid plan. And we've been answering to a lot of the demands that were made by my provincial colleagues. A lot of them have said, help us with infrastructure. Even some have asked us to help them with health infrastructures, like the hospitals, the clinics, and we answered yes to that. We're happy to do our part, and this is a first for the federal government. So we're going to keep working together. I hear him on nuclear. I think Canada has a leading position when it comes to nuclear. How can we grow the sector? How can we make sure at the same time we protect our workers? Because like I said, if you're in the steel industry today, in the auto sector, in particular in Ontario, things are tough. So how can we protect our workers, make sure we invest together to pivot the industry and provide new markets for our goods? So we're very aligned, I must say, with the Finance Minister, but also with Premier Ford. We talk regularly, and we both have confidence in Canada and the potential that this budget and other measures will bring us, this country, to its full potential.
Minister, your budget has a number of sub...
Donnez-moi juste une seconde. Écoutez, d'abord, j'ai pris connaissance des commentaires de mon collègue, le ministre des Finances de l'Ontario. D'abord, je lui souhaite bonne chance parce qu'aujourd'hui, c'est une journée importante pour mon collègue qui va présenter une mise à jour. On s'est rencontrés ce matin. Vous savez, on a une collaboration excellente. On se parle régulièrement, très conscient des enjeux de l'Ontario. L'Ontario est aussi au cœur de l'économie canadienne. Je pense qu'on a répondu à plusieurs des demandes qui avaient été faites autour, par exemple, des infrastructures, des investissements en logement, des investissements dans la productivité et la compétitivité. Une des choses qu'on nous avait demandé, c'est de faire plus en infrastructure, mais aussi d'inclure les infrastructures de santé, donc les cliniques, les hôpitaux. Donc, on a répondu présent, on est content de faire notre part. Puis ce que j'ai dit à mon collègue, c'est qu'on allait continuer de travailler ensemble avec lui puis le Premier ministre Ford pour faire avancer. Il y a des secteurs comme on a parlé du nucléaire qui est important, et aussi comme on peut travailler ensemble pour, évidemment, défendre les travailleurs du secteur automobile, de l'acier, permettre aux industries de pivoter vers des nouveaux marchés, protéger nos travailleurs. Alors, on va travailler main dans la main, on travaille très bien ensemble, puis on va continuer de travailler ensemble.
Minister, your budget says that has several measures on banking and competition. Now, Carolyn Rogers has said that the banking sector in Canada is an oligopoly, that the Big Six hold more than 90% of all bank assets in Canada. So, with considering this dynamic, how is this environment, how does it disadvantage consumers and businesses, and why did you choose this moment with the budget to double down on some measures to help crack open the banking sector?
Well, I think what the budget does is to put consumer front and center, to look at the needs of consumer first, and then say, okay, what do they need as consumer? And how do you allow more innovation within the Canadian banking system, recognizing that we have probably the most solid banking system in the world. And so you need to build on that, and you say, allow new entrants to bring the kind of innovation that consumers would want to see. And that's open banking, if you make it simple for people, is really allowing them to be at the center of the sector or the industry. Talking about also providing a data mobility, the data that is within one of the financial institution, how you can move it more freely, allowing you to move your accounts more freely at lower cost, and in some cases at no cost. So it's really a reflection to say, whilst we build on the very big, on the strength of our financial sector, how we can bring more innovation while maintaining trust. Because for me, that's why there's a role for government, there's a role for the Bank of Canada, there's a role for the major banks, but there's also a role for all the fintech sector, which is coming with new innovation, new ideas. And in a way, we're catching them a bit when it comes to open banking, but when it comes to Canadian stablecoin, we're leading. So this is how I want to make sure that in the G7, we're one of the leaders in the technology of tomorrow that will enable consumers to make better choice and to manage their money the way they see fit.
And you said that it's been a while now that issues haven't been addressed. So with the lag and the delay in this timeline, how has this affected consumers and businesses as they struggle to deal in this very consolidated banking environment?
Well, I think it's going to be good news for consumers, because that's not only something that the sector has been wanting, but it's something I think, like you said, consumers have been waiting for. So I think today we're providing the predictability and stability that the sector needs to innovate, because they know the timeline, they know the changes that are coming, and also to be able to work together, the fintech sector, the banks, the telecom sector. Because one thing I was saying, if you're a consumer, you're not making a distinction between all that. For you, it's usually an app on your phone, and you want that to work seamlessly. So our role is to work in collaboration with all the market participants, I would say, to make sure that from a consumer perspective, it's easy, it's trustworthy, and it's innovative at the same time. So I think this is really, when I say put the consumer at the center, is that what's the need of the consumer? How can you help them make better choice and manage their money the way they want?
Does the Bank of Canada have enough resources to handle these new responsibilities? And does fintech oversight conflict with the central bank's political independence?
Well, I would say in our discussion with the Bank of Canada, and you rightly noted they're independent, and so we consulted to make sure that the new responsibilities that we would ask the bank to take over is that they would have the capacity to do that. So I'm confident with that, because we already had discussion with the Bank of Canada, and the Bank of Canada is a most trusted institution in our country when it comes to stability of the financial sector and making sure that we have proper regulation and systems in place. So I think, if you want to have adoption and innovation, I often say you need to build trust. And having the Bank of Canada being part of the ecosystem to make sure that the rules are there will give trust to Canadians.
Is there enough human resources? Because we heard layoffs happened at the Bank of Canada yesterday.
Well, this is a decision for the bank in a sense. As you know, they are independent from government. But what I can tell you is, in the consultation we had with the Bank of Canada, they felt confident that they had the knowledge, expertise, and people in order to be able to take on these new responsibilities.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just quickly,
Yes.
you had a new member across the floor yesterday.
Yes.
Is there anything you can do to get some more? Is there some,
Listen, I've been pretty busy these last few days, as you might expect, but it's a great addition to our caucus, and it's also a reflection when I say this is a budget that is for Canadians. It is a budget that empowers Canadians, gives control to Canadians about our destiny as a country, and I'm happy to see that Mr. D'Entremont saw that and said, I want to be part of that. And I think there's many others in their hearts that know that this budget is going to help families, going to help workers, is going to help the country to move forward. So I hope they reflect on that. They still have a few hours to reflect. Merci.
When will you introduce stablecoin and open banking legislation?
Well, it's in the regulation and the press release we said this morning. I just have to go because we just need to go vote, actually.
Okay.
To be able to go vote. So